The US Congress has formally certified Donald Trump's victory in November's presidential election. The House of Representatives and Senate convened for a joint session under heavy security inside and outside the Capitol building. Vice President Kamala Harris, who lost to Mr. Trump in the election, presided over the certification. Donald Trump will take his oath of office on the 20th of January. Let's go straight to the US Capitol building then, where we join our correspondent Benjamin Alvarez Gruber. Welcome, Ben. It seems calm there now, very different to the scenes we witnessed 4 years ago.
That's right, it is very calm. This area has been cordoned off because this is a so-called national special security event. That's the highest nominator that the federal government has for events like this. Something that we also see, for example, at the DNC, at the Democratic National Convention, at the Republican National Convention. So the area has been cordoned off. We have not seen any larger group of protesters in favor of Mr. Trump or against the certification. It was a joint session of Congress, as you already mentioned, half an hour, and after that it was certified that Donald Trump won this election. And it can be also named a little bit as irony that it was Kamala Harris, the vice president and president of the Senate, that gave this result. So there are a lot of police officers here, but it's sad, and as we see also probably with those pictures now, quite different to the scenes that unfolded here 4 years ago when supporters of Donald Trump tried to impede the ratification of the election result.
And so what do Americans think of the president-elect's promises to pardon the rioters?
So it's definitely a difficult topic also for him. We can imagine that there will be several discussions when he takes office in 2 weeks from now. And also we can expect that there will be a lot of pressure from those family members of those who went into the Capitol and also were sentenced to high years of prison there, because some of them also had prior convictions. And that's what many say, that it won't be a blank pardon. But of course, many legals are not sure, many legal experts, on how this will unfold, how quickly he can actually do what he promised to get those people out of jail. So we can expect also within the Republican Party that not everyone will be in favor of Trump's promise to pardon all of those who were involved and were also sentenced. We know that this has been very large investigation, the largest of the history of the Department of Justice. There have been a lot of special counsels also there involved with those cases. But we can expect from the family members of those who went into the Capitol on January 6th, exactly 4 years, that there will be a lot of pressure for them to ask incoming President Donald Trump to actually execute and pardon those who were and are now in jail for what they committed 4 years ago.
Just a quick word more then on the resistance from his own Republican Party on the pardoning of these insurrectionists.
That's right, and that's exactly where all these legal discussions will now happen, because some are saying that he should look by case to see exactly who should be pardoned. That's, of course, one of the faculties that the President of the United States have. We saw it recently when President Biden decided to pardon his son Hunter. That's something that he also pledged not to do, and he promised not to pardon him, but he did it. So that's something that the President has in its capacities, but we can expect that there will be discussions within the Republican Party by how far the president should go and also when this should happen, because Donald Trump has made a lot of promises on what he would do on day one. Also, when it comes to other things where he said that he will do them on day one, but he has to look into it. There is an organization of family members that has been getting all those papers together, getting all those names and asking for those pardons on day one. But we can expect that there will be further discussion also with legal experts saying that the incoming president should look into case by case and not send out a blank pardon.
OK, thanks for that, Ben. DW correspondent Benjamin Alvarez Gruber in Washington, D.C. Well, let's pick up some of those questions with James Robenalt, who is a presidential historian, lawyer and partner at Thomas Hines Business Litigation Practice Group. He joins us from Ohio in the United States. Welcome to DW. So what do you think? Do you believe
Hello,
that...
Mr. Dale.
President Trump will pardon all these January 6th rioters?
I think he's either going to do one of two things. He's either going to have a blanket pardon for all of them, or they're going to look at certain people who could be pardoned and some who cannot. I mean, some of those who were convicted were, guilty of violence against police officers. And those people, I think, may not be included, but it's hard to tell. He hasn't really said for sure which way he'd go, but it's going to be one of those two ways. And frankly, it echoes back to Jimmy Carter, who just passed away on his first day in office, pardoned all of the people who had evaded the draft during the Vietnam War. So that was a blanket pardon, and it was within his power, just as it is within Trump's power to pardon these people.
And what is the benefit to President Trump of doing this? He's a second-term president. He has nothing to lose or perhaps to gain.
Yeah, to me, this is a very difficult time in the United States. There are a lot of people who are really upset about this election, upset that people would let him come back to office after what happened on January 6th in particular. And there are structural reasons that happened. But for him, it is all about justifying his loss and saying these people did nothing wrong. Well, in fact, they did something very wrong. It was an insurrection against an election, and it was one of the great crimes of American history. So it may help him out personally to feel that he's vindicated by all this, but history, I don't think, will look kindly on this.
OK, so some of the insurrectionists coming out of jail. He's also said that some members of the House committee that investigated the January 6th attack should go to jail. There's lots of concerns that he's going to try and turn the Justice Department on his political enemies. Are there checks and balances in place to prevent that?
Well, you ask a very good question, and it's a complicated answer, but let me see if I can make it somewhat simple. The United States Constitution provides that every state has 2 senators, whether you're small or large. So California, who has 40 million residents, has 2 senators. Wyoming, who has 500,000, has 2 senators. And the problem is, when they created the Constitution, they made that a provision that no one could amend. So we've got a Senate that didn't act in the interest of the majority of the people when Donald Trump was impeached the second time for January 6th. It was a political crime. It was exactly the type of high crime or misdemeanor that the founders meant would be enacted if someone did something like this. And instead, the Senate, which is representing a minority of the people in this country, voted to not convict him. Once that happened, then he was able to still run again. Had he been convicted, he would not have been able to run again. So we've got this situation where he then set it up as this is a political problem. And when they went after him for criminal charges, because the Senate didn't do what it should have done, that begins to look like it's a political prosecution. And now tit for tat, he's going to come back and say, so I have the right to do that.
Right.
It is a failure of the Constitution because of the U.S. Senate and the way it's structured.
And a quick word then about how Trump has positioned himself ahead of assuming office, because he's been very visible. He's been out and about. We've seen world leaders going to Mar-a-Lago. What does this tell us?
Well, it tells us that people have to agree with the reality that this vote ended up with him as president of the United States. As much as we don't like it, as much as a whole bunch of people feel very strongly that this was incorrect, you're going to see today that the Democrats will go through with January 6th without a problem, which is what we need to do. We need to recognize the will of the voters. But, world leaders don't have a choice about who the president of the United States is going to be. It's going to be Donald Trump. So they have to, in some way, recognize this. At the same time, there has to be a loyal opposition that's strong. And we'll see that mostly in the U.S. House of Representatives, where it's a very close, vote there. And That's going to be the only thing that kind of keeps us between having a democracy and falling into autocracy.
Thanks for talking us through that. A lawyer and presidential historian, James Robenalt.